I was lying in bed last night, just staring at the ceiling, thinking about numbers,
As one does.
as one does when they can't sleep, right?
Yeah.
And I came across this figure earlier in the day that it got stuck in my brain. It just wouldn't let go. $700 billion.
That's a number that demands your attention. It's really hard to even visualize that much money.
It's impossible. But, let's try. That is roughly the amount of money that the United States federal government spends on contracts every single year.
And we're not just talking about, the big ticket items.
No, not at all. I mean, sure, we're talking about aircraft carriers and, building massive infrastructure projects. That's part of it. But we are also talking about paper clips. We're talking about landscaping services.
We're talking about catering, IT consulting, janitorial services.
Specialized gaskets for some piece of machinery in a basement somewhere. I mean, it is, and this is without hyperbole, the largest single customer in the entire world.
It's the whale. It's the ultimate whale. If you're a business owner, you have to think of the federal government as the client that never, ever goes out of business.
Right.
They rarely cancel a project because they ran out of cash, and they always, always pay their bills.
Eventually.
Eventually, yes, that's a fair point.
That's the operative word there. But, okay, here's the disconnect that I just can't get past. You have this ocean of opportunity, $700 billion just swirling around.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the average small business owner, and they're just sort of standing on the shore. And between them and that ocean isn't a bridge, it's a wall. It's this massive, gray, terrifying wall of bureaucracy.
Ah, the famous red tape wall. It's legendary.
It's totally legendary. And I think most people, they look at federal contracting and they think, I would love a piece of that action. I'd love to stabilize my revenue with that kind of client, but I value my sanity way too much.
Oh, absolutely. They picture these mountains of paperwork, right? An alphabet soup of confusing acronyms.
Exactly. And a process that probably takes 6 months just to get a form rejection letter because you forgot to, dot an I on page 37.
And to be fair, that reputation wasn't created out of thin air. I mean, historically, government procurement has been a slog. It's been opaque, it's been slow, and it's been incredibly unfriendly to the little guy.
But that is precisely why we're here today. We are doing a deep dive into a guide from a group called Level Up, The Enlightened Edge. And the title of this guide is, it's almost provocative. It feels like a dare.
It does.
It's called How to Register in SAM.gov in Under an Hour.
It really sounds like a clickbait title, doesn't it? Lose 10 pounds in 10 minutes.
Yes. Or register for multi-million-dollar federal contracts in under an hour.
It sets off all the alarm bells.
It really does. My skepticism radar was just pinging like crazy. Think about it. I can't even get my driver's license renewed in under an hour.
I can't decide what to watch on Netflix in under an hour.
Right. And you're sitting here telling me I can register to become, a federal defense contractor in 60 minutes. It seems impossible.
It's a very bold claim.
Yeah.
But as we went through the material, I think you'll agree, it actually holds water. But, and this is a huge but, only if you know the secret.
There's always a secret.
And the secret isn't some clever hack. It's not a cheat code. It's cooking.
Cooking. Okay, you have to explain that.
It relies completely on this French culinary concept that chefs use called mise en place.
Mise en place. Everything in its place.
Precisely. Before you even think about turning on the stove, you chop the onions, you measure out the spices, you have everything laid out in little bowls, all prepped and ready to go.
I see where you're going with this.
The argument that Level Up makes is that the actual typing, the clicking of buttons inside the government's online system, that part is fast. It's just a form, like any other online form.
The nightmare part, the thing that makes it take weeks, is the scrambling.
Yes. It's the scrambling to find your tax ID number, or trying to remember the exact legal name of your business while the session timer on the website is counting down to 0.
And it kicks you out and you lose all your work.
Exactly. So if you do the prep correctly, if you have your mise en place all set, the vault door just opens smoothly.
So today, our mission is to test that theory. We're going to walk through this guide, step by painful step, and see if we can actually demystify this gateway to the federal marketplace. We're talking about SAM.gov.
What it is, why it scares people so much, and how to conquer it without completely losing your mind.
And more importantly, why you should even care. Because this isn't just about filling out a form, is it? This is about fundamentally changing the DNA of your business.
It's about moving from being a local player to a federal player. It's a huge leap.
I like that framing. So, okay, let's start the very, very beginning. The acronym itself, SAM, S-A-M, the system for award management.
It just sounds so bureaucratic.
To me, that sounds like the most boring collection of words in the English language. It sounds like a place where fun goes to die.
It's certainly not the Avengers, but you really have to look past the name. Think of SAM not as a website, but as a bouncer.
A bouncer, like at a nightclub.
Exactly like that. A bouncer at the most exclusive, highest-paying club in the entire global economy. And if your name is not on the list, you do not get in.
So it doesn't matter how well-dressed you are.
It doesn't matter if you have the best product in the hemisphere. It doesn't matter if you know the general who runs the base inside. If your business's name isn't active in the SAM database, you are literally invisible to the United States government.
Okay, so let's play that out. I'm a brilliant software developer. I've built this incredible new tool that could save the Pentagon millions of dollars a year. The general loves it. He wants to buy it. He's got the checkbook ready. He can't just write me a check.
He legally cannot. The contracting officer, that's the person with what's called a warrant, which is the actual authority to spend taxpayer money. They are prohibited from awarding a contract to any entity that is not active in SAM.
So they can't even process the payment.
They can't. The Treasury Department's payment systems are all digitally linked directly to the SAM database. If your SAM record isn't there and active, the money literally cannot flow out of the Treasury and into your bank account.
Wow. So it's the admission ticket, the background check, and the direct deposit link all rolled into one system.
Exactly. And it's also the gateway to something else that's incredibly important: set-asides.
Right.
You know, we talk a lot about leveling the playing field in business. Well, this is where the government actually puts its money where its mouth is. They have statutory goals. They are required by law to spend roughly 23% of their prime contracting dollars with small businesses.
23% of that $700 billion number. That is a massive slice of the pie.
It's hundreds of billions of dollars. And it gets even more specific. They have sub-goals for women-owned small businesses, for veteran-owned small businesses, for businesses located in what they call hub zones.
Which are historically underutilized business zones.
Correct. Specific geographic areas they want to invest in.
But you can't just claim those titles, right? You can't just put a sticker on your website that says veteran-owned or hang a sign in your window.
Nope. You have to certify, you have to prove it through documentation. And where does that certification live? Where is it recorded?
Let me guess. Inside SAM.gov.
Inside SAM. So if you aren't registered, you are leaving all of that potential advantage on the table. You're basically choosing to compete with one hand tied behind your back against the giant corporations when there is a special lane, a protected lane, designed just for you that you aren't even using.
Okay, so the why is incredibly compelling. You've got stability, massive revenue potential, and access to these protected pots of money. So let's tackle the how. The guide makes this claim: under an hour. But before we can even think about starting the timer, we have to do the prep work. This is what the guide calls Phase 1, gathering intelligence.
This is it. This is where the entire battle is won or lost, long before you ever see a login screen.
And the strategy they propose is something called the digital folder strategy. It sounds incredibly basic, almost, insulting to a sophisticated business owner.
It does. It sounds like something you tell a high school student.
Yeah.
But I have personally seen seasoned professionals with decades of experience fail at this registration because they skip this one basic step.
Okay, so explain the strategy. Is it really just a folder on your desktop?
It is, but it's the discipline of the folder that matters.
Yep.
You create a new folder on your computer. Inside that folder, you create a blank text document, and you put every single piece of data you are going to need into that one document before you ever open a web browser.
So why is that so critical? I mean, why can't I just look it up as I go? If the form asks for my tax ID, why can't I just pull my tax return out of the filing cabinet right then?
Because of a place I like to call the purgatory of manual review.
That sounds ominous. Is that like Dante's Inferno, but for bureaucrats?
It is the place where registrations go to die, or at least to go to sleep for 6 to 8 weeks. You see, SAM.gov is an automated system for the most part. It validates your data against other massive government databases: the IRS, the Social Security Administration, the Defense Logistics Agency.
And it expects a perfect match.
It expects a 100% accurate match. Character for character, punctuation for punctuation.
So let's take an example. If the IRS knows my company as Alpha Solutions, LLC.
And you get a little lazy and you type Alpha Solutions LLC without the comma into the SAM form, the computer sees a mismatch. Doesn't know it's the same company.
It just sees two different strings of text.
Exactly. So it flags the registration, it kicks it out of the automated queue, And suddenly, you're not getting registered in an hour. You're submitting a help desk ticket and waiting for a human being to manually review your documents to prove you are who you say you are.
Ouch.
So the digital folder allows you to copy and paste.
Copy and paste is your absolute best friend in this process. It completely eliminates the fat finger error. It ensures that what you put in that text file is exactly what goes into the system every single time.
Okay, let's go through this folder. Let's rate it. What are the ingredients we need for our mise en place? The first one listed is the UEI, the Unique Entity Identifier. Now, for anyone who's been around for a while, maybe they did this 10 years ago, they're probably looking through their files for their DUNS number.
And they would be looking in the wrong place. This is a huge, huge shift that happened just recently. For decades, the government used the DUNS number, which is owned and managed by a private company, Dun & Bradstreet.
Which, always felt a little bit weird, didn't it? That you had to go to a private, for-profit company to get permission to work with the public government. It was problematic for a number of reasons, mostly centered around data rights and who owned the information. So the government finally ditched it. They built their own system and created their own identifier, the UEI. It's a 12-character alphanumeric code.
Okay, so how do I get one? And more importantly, do I have to pay for this? Because I have heard stories of people getting charged for it.
No. That is a very, very important point. There are scam websites out there. There are shady consultants who will try to charge you $500 to get your UEI or to expedite your registration.
All a scam.
It is all a scam. The UEI is 100% free. You request it directly from the SAM.gov website itself.
But here's where it gets a little tricky. The guide mentions that getting the UEI is actually a pre-step. You need to have it in your digital folder before you start the registration proper.
That's correct. You go to SAM.gov, and there's an option that just says get a unique entity ID. You do that first. But I want to pause on this step for a second, because this is where a lot of people get stuck.
Right. I've heard the horror stories. People say, I typed in my own address, my legal business address, and the system said, no match found. How is that even possible?
Happens all the time. The system uses a validation service to check your business name and address against existing commercial databases.
Like the post office database.
It's similar to that, but it pulls from a wider range of sources. But here's the nuance. The system is incredibly brittle. Punctuation matters. Abbreviations matter. If the official record they have on file says N Main St. with periods, and you type North Main Street, all spelled out.
The algorithm might be smart enough to figure it out, or it might not.
It probably won't. And if you get that no-match error, the system then asks you to start uploading documents, your articles of incorporation, a utility bill, a bank statement.
And that's the moment. That's where the under an hour dream dies.
That's it. Because now a human being has to look at your case, and you're in the manual review queue.
So what's the trick? What does the guide say to do?
The trick is to try variations before you give up and click the Request Help button. You're basically trying to guess what their database says. Try street instead of St. Serve. Try removing the suite number. Try adding the suite number. Brute force the search until you find the exact record that they have on file for you.
You're trying to hack the match.
You're aligning your reality with their digital reality. And once you find that match, you accept it, even if it has a typo.
Wait, really? You're telling me to accept a typo in my own company name?
Yes. This is a critical strategic pivot. Let's say the record says Smith Consulting with 2 T's. Your instinct is to correct it. Don't.
That it's wrong.
It is wrong, but if you try to fix it right then and there, you enter the manual review cycle. So you have to ask yourself a question. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be registered?
Okay, I see.
Get in the door first, get the UEI, get the registration active. Then once you're in the system, you can file a separate ticket to correct the name. Fix the furniture after you've bought the house.
That is some serious insider-level advice. You will not find that on the government's FAQ page. Okay, so I've got the UEI. Ingredient number 1 is in the folder. Next up, the TIN or EIN.
Taxpayer Identification Number or Employer Identification Number. This is your unique identifier with the IRS.
And I'm going to assume the exact match rule applies here in a big way.
It applies doubly so. The SAM system literally sends a real-time digital ping to the IRS database. It says, hey, IRS, does EIN 123456789 belong to a company named Acme Corp? If the IRS computer pings back and says, no, that EIN belongs to Acme Corporation, the registration fails on the spot.
I'm starting to feel like we're building a strong case for obsessive-compulsive behavior being a major business asset here.
In the world of government contracting, a little bit of OCD is definitely a superpower. You need your tax ID number, and you need to know the exact legal name as it appears on your last tax filing, character for character.
Okay, moving down our checklist. We've got the other legal stuff, physical address, date of incorporation, state of incorporation. Pretty standard business hygiene. But then we get to the section that makes people nervous. The banking information.
The getting paid section. It's the most important one.
Right. We need the bank's routing number, our account number, and the account type, like checking or savings. Why does the government need this so early in the process? Why can't I just give them an invoice with that info later?
Because the federal government does not write paper checks.
Sure.
They don't hand out wads of cash. Absolutely everything is done via EFT, electronic funds transfer.
So it's all direct deposit.
It's all direct deposit.
Yeah.
And this is primarily a security feature, but it's also an efficiency feature for them. When you win a contract, the payment terms are all set up. When you submit a valid invoice, the Treasury system automatically pushes the money directly to that specific account on file.
I can only imagine the horror of winning a six-figure contract, doing all the work, sending the invoice, and then nothing. Silence. Just because you transposed a digit in your account number?
It happens more than you think, and fixing it is 10 times harder than getting it right in the first place. If the money goes out and bounces back, it triggers this whole administrative cascade.
Yeah.
You have to update the record, recertify your information, and then the payment office has to reissue the whole thing. You could easily delay your payday by a month or more just by missing one single digit.
So the lesson is, copy and paste from your online banking portal, read it backwards, have your spouse or a colleague read it to you, do whatever you have to do to get it right.
100%.
Now, there's one more ingredient in our mise en place that I think is the most interesting one. It's not just administrative data, it's deeply strategic data. I'm talking about the NAICS codes. NAICS.
The North American Industry Classification System.
Gesundheit.
It's a mouthful, for sure. But you have to understand, this is the fundamental language of federal procurement.
Explain that. How is a six-digit code a language?
Okay, imagine you are a contracting officer at an Air Force base. You need to buy, let's say, landscaping services for the base housing. You don't just go to Google and type lawn care near me.
Right.
You go into your procurement system and you look up the specific designated code for landscaping services, which happens to be 561730.
So the code is the job description, in a way.
It is. When the government posts a new opportunity on their contracting websites, they tag it with one or more NAICS codes. When they're searching for qualified vendors to send a proposal to, they search the SAM database by NAICS code.
So if I'm a landscaper, but I didn't put 561730 in my SAM profile.
To that buyer, you do not exist. You are completely invisible for that opportunity.
That seems like an incredibly high-stakes selection from what is probably just a drop-down menu in a form.
It is, and this is where that digital folder strategy shifts from just being about accurate data entry to being about real business strategy. The guide recommends, and I could not second this more strongly, that you do not just guess these codes while you are in the middle of filling out the form.
Because there are thousands of them, right? It's not like there are just 10 categories.
There are thousands, and the nuance between them really matters. For example, let's say you're an IT company. There's a code for custom computer programming services, but there's also a different code for computer systems design services, and another one for data processing and hosting. Which one are you?
Can I be all of them?
You can, and you should. You can list as many relevant codes as you want in your profile, but, and this is important, you have to select one of them as your primary NAICS code. And that primary code usually determines your size standard.
Well, hang on. Size standard. I thought a small business was just, a small business.
Not in the federal world. This is a crucial concept to grasp. What the government considers small is defined differently for every single industry and is tied to the NAICS code.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's say you're a computer reseller. You sell hardware. That's NAICS code 334111. The size standard for that code is based on your number of employees. As long as you have fewer than 1,250 employees, you are considered small.
Wait, 1,250 employees. That's a huge small business. You could be making $1 billion in revenue, but if you have 1,000 people, you're still small.
Technically, for that code, yes. Now, let's look at a different industry, engineering services. NAICS 541330. The size standard there isn't based on employees. It's based on your average annual revenue, which is roughly $25.5 million.
So it doesn't matter if I have 5 employees or 500. If my company makes $26 million, I'm suddenly other than small.
Correct. You're now in the full and open competition category. You're swimming with the big sharks like Lockheed and Boeing.
So if I pick the wrong primary code when I register,
You could accidentally classify yourself as a large business and disqualify yourself from all of those small business set-asides we talked about. Or you might pick a code where the revenue cap is very low and you outgrow your small business status way too fast.
so the strategic advice here is, before you ever log into SAM, go to the Census Bureau's website or just Google NAICS search tool. Find all the codes that match what you do today, but also think about the codes that match what you want to do in the future.
The rule of thumb is cast a wide net, but a realistic one. Don't list nuclear power plant construction if you're a two-person IT firm.
Yeah.
It just looks unprofessional. It makes it look like you're spamming the system.
Right.
But do list every single variation of IT service that you can legitimately perform.
Okay, so our digital folder is now packed. We have our UEI, our TIN, our banking info, our exact legal name and address, and our strategic list of NAICS codes. We've done the prep. We are ready to start cooking.
Almost. There's one more gate we have to pass through before we can even enter SAM itself.
Right. The login process. We don't just go to SAM.gov and create a username and password. We have to go through a separate site, login.gov.
Which is rapidly becoming the universal key for all federal government services. If you've ever applied for global entry for travel or looked for a federal job on USAO BES, you might actually have an account already.
It's sort of like the government's version of sign in with Google.
Exactly, but with significantly more security. And this is where the guide really emphasizes the need for a multi-factor authentication, or MFA. You are going to need your phone. You will need to set up a text message code or an authenticator app. There's no way around it.
Which, frankly, is something we should all be doing for our important accounts anyway. But for the government, it's absolutely mandatory.
It is. They take cybersecurity very, very seriously. But there's a pro tip here in the guide about the email address you use to create this account that I think is incredibly important.
Yes, I saw this, the no Gmail rule. Or, well, not literally no Gmail, but the professional email tip.
Right. You can technically use a personal Gmail or Yahoo account. The system won't stop you. But the guide strongly advises against using a personal email address like coolguy88@gmail.com.
I feel personally attacked. I'm pretty sure coolguy88 was my AOL Instant Messenger handle in 1999.
And it was great for AIM. But when you're submitting a multi-million-dollar proposal to the Department of Defense, it just screams amateur.
It's all about that veneer of professionalism.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
When a contracting officer gets an email from john@smithconsulting.com, it immediately signals that you are an established professional entity. You have a domain. You have some basic infrastructure. Even if it's just you operating out of your basement, that domain name makes you look like a real corporation.
And there's a really practical side to this too, right? Just keeping your business communications separate.
Hugely practical. If you use your personal email, your official government notifications are going to be buried between your Netflix bills, your spam from that online store you visited one time, and photos from your cousin's wedding. You do not want a multi-million-dollar request for proposal, an RFP, to get lost in that noise.
Or even worse, a renewal notice for your SAM registration.
Exactly. So step 0 is get a professional email address. Use that to create your login.gov account. Verify your identity. Now, finally, you have the keys to the kingdom.
Okay, we're in. We've passed through the outer gate. We are logged into SAM.gov. We click that big button that says Register New Entity. The clock officially starts now.
And because you have your digital folder all ready to go, this next part is going to be a breeze. You're not thinking anymore. You're essentially just transcribing.
Walk us through the workflow. What's the very first hurdle inside the system?
First, you have to define your purpose. The system asks you a simple question. Why are you here? Do you want to bid on federal contracts? Or are you just here to apply for federal grants?
And for most of our listeners, the answer is
The answer is all awards. That option covers both contracts and grants. It gives you the maximum possible flexibility. You should never limit yourself at this stage unless you have a very specific niche reason to do so.
got it. Then comes the entity type.
Right. And the system needs to know your corporate structure. Are you a sole proprietor? An LLC? A C Corp? An S Corp?
Does the system really care about the difference?
It cares deeply. And this information must match your tax documents perfectly. If you told the IRS on your last filing that you are an S Corp, but you tell Sam that you're just a sole proprietor, you're going to trigger a mismatch.
There's that word again. Mismatch. It is the enemy of speed.
It is the ultimate enemy. So check your incorporation paperwork. Know your structure before you begin.
Okay, then we hit the core data section. This is where we finally get to use our digital folder. We dump in the UEI and the TIM.
Copy, paste, verify.
And then we hit a field for a cage code. We haven't talked about the cage code yet. CAGE. It sounds like a prison.
It does, doesn't it? It stands for Commercial and Government Entity Code. It's a 5-character code that's used primarily by the Department of Defense and other agencies for cataloging.
So is this another thing I need to have in my folder beforehand? Did we miss a step?
No. And this confuses people constantly. You do not bring a cage code to the party. The government gives you a cage code at the end of the party.
So it's a party favor.
It's exactly that. If you're a U.S.-based company, you don't apply for a cage code separately. The SAM registration process will automatically request one for you from the DLA, the Defense Logistics Agency, once your registration is submitted.
So when the system asks me if I have one, I just say no.
You just say, no, I don't have one, and the system will trigger the assignment process in the background. It's one less thing you have to worry about gathering.
That is a huge relief.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. We enter our physical address, our start date, and then we hit a section called assertions. This is where our NAICS code research comes into play.
This is the fun part, really. You've already done the strategic work. You have your list of 5, 10, maybe even 20 codes that apply to your business. You just search for them by number or keyword and add them to your profile one by one.
Is there a limit to how many I can add?
There's no hard technical limit. Yeah. But there is a sanity limit. If you list 500 different codes covering everything from catering to missile defense systems to janitorial services, a contracting officer is going to look at your profile and think, this isn't a real business. This is just a shell company trying to game the system.
It looks like spam.
It looks like you have no focus and no real expertise. You want to be broad, but you also want to be coherent. If you're in the construction business, it makes sense to list framing, drywall, electrical, plumbing, and general contracting. That tells a story.
Right.
But don't add dental hygiene services to that list just because you saw a contract for it once and thought it might pay well.
Stick to your lane, but make sure you use the whole lane.
That's the perfect way to put it.
I noticed something else in the guide here in this section. It's just a little checkbox, but it seems important. It's about disaster response. What is that all about?
That is a hidden gem in the SAM profile. It's a literal checkbox that asks a simple question. Do you want to be included in the disaster response registry? Most people just fly right past it.
And what does checking yes actually do for me?
It puts you on a special shortlist. When a hurricane hits the coast or a wildfire tears through a state or, a global pandemic happens,
Yeah.
the government doesn't have time to do a full 90-day competitive proposal process. They need bottled water, tarps, debris removal services, and emergency IT support right now.
They need speed above all else.
So where do they go first? They go to the Disaster Response Registry. They pull the list of all the vendors in the affected geographical area who checked yes to that question, and they just start calling down the list.
So these are emergency contracts.
Often, they are sole source contracts, no competition. They call you and say, can you deliver 10,000 gallons of potable water to this location by tomorrow? Good. Here's the purchase order. Go.
And people just miss this checkbox.
They breeze right past it. If you sell anything that could conceivably be useful in an emergency construction, logistics, food, medical supplies, transportation, you should check that box.
It costs nothing to do it.
It costs $0. But it could be the source of your first and maybe your largest federal contract.
That's amazing. Okay, phase 4 of the guide, the people. It talks about points of contact, or POCs, and it mentions a rule of 3.
That's right. SAM requires you to designate specific people, or at least specific roles, for communication. They want a government POC, an electronic business POC, and an accounts receivable POC.
Okay, but what if I'm a solopreneur? I mean, for my business, I am the CEO, the IT guy, and the finance department. Can I just be all 3?
You absolutely can, and most small businesses do. You just put your own name and your own email address in all 3 of those boxes. But you must fill them out. They are mandatory fields.
Why does the government separate them like that?
Because for larger companies, these really are different departments. The contracting officer needs to know who to call to negotiate the terms of the contract. That's the government POC. The government's IT help desk needs to know who to call if your digital security certificate is about to expire. That's the electronic business POC.
And the Treasury Department needs to know who to call if a payment fails.
Exactly. That's the accounts receivable POC. It's all about routing the communication to the right expert efficiently.
And for the small business owner who is all three of those people, the lesson here is monitor that email address like a hawk.
Absolutely. The government POC email address is the one that will receive the "Congratulations, you have won the contract" email. If that goes to an old inbox you never check, well, that's just a tragedy.
Or tragedy and a fireable offense, even if you're the one firing yourself.
Indeed.
Okay, next up in the registration workflow is a section called Reps and Certs. That's short for Representations and Certifications. This sounds very legal.
It is very legal. This is the part of the registration where you are swearing under penalty of federal law to a whole series of statements about your business.
What kind of statements are we talking about here?
Things like, "I certify that I have not been convicted of a felony in the last 3 years." Or, "I certify that my company does not use telecommunications equipment from certain banned Chinese companies." Or, "I certify that my business qualifies as small, according to the size standards, for my primary NAICS code."
This definitely feels like the part of the process where you shouldn't just click yes, yes, yes to get through it quickly.
You should not. You are digitally signing a federal document. You need to read the questions. Now, for most small businesses, the answers are straightforward no's regarding bad behavior. But some of them do require you to actually check your records. For example, that provision about telecommunications, which is called RR 889, requires you to actively verify you aren't using prohibited technology in your company.
This seems like a place where the under an hour goal could get derailed if you're not prepared.
It can. The section looks intimidating because there's a lot of dense legal text. It's always referencing parts of the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation. But the underlying concepts are actually quite simple. Are you an honest operator? Are you a U.S.-owned company? Do you pay your taxes?
Speaking of taxes and money, after the reps and certs, we finally get to input that banking information we gathered all the way back in phase 1.
This is the critical moment. You carefully copy and paste your routing number. You copy and paste your account number.
And the guide has a huge critical warning box right here.
For good reason. Double check it. Triple check it. Have someone else read it back to you. If you make a typo here, one of two bad things will happen. Either the registration might technically pass, but you won't get paid when you win a contract later, or the automated validation check with the bank will fail during the review process and your whole registration will get kicked back to you.
It really seems like the overarching theme of this entire process is that accuracy is speed.
That is the perfect summary of the entire philosophy. Any attempt to rush the data entry by being sloppy is what ultimately causes the weeks-long delays. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast.
Okay, so we've filled in everything, we've navigated the forms, we're now at phase 5, submission. But before we hit that big, beautiful submit button, the guide lists some rules of the road for the actual technical session itself. The first one is called the one browser rule.
This is a crucial technical survival tip. You have to remember that SAM.gov is an incredibly complex web application. It's using a lot of session cookies and security tokens to keep track of who you are and what you're doing.
I sense a but coming on.
But it gets confused very easily. If you have your SAM registration open in a tab in Chrome and you have it open in a different tab in Firefox because you're trying to look something up, the system can get its wires crossed. It might think you're a bot trying to hack it, or it might overwrite the data from one tab with the data from the other.
And the result of that is?
The result is the dreaded session timeout error. You finally get to the end, you hit submit, and the little wheel spins for a minute, and then error. Your session is expired. Please log in again. And all of your data from the last hour is gone.
Oh, the agony. I can feel that in my soul. Losing unsaved form data is the modern-day version of heartbreak.
It is entirely preventable. One window, one tab. Close everything else on your computer. Focus on this one task. Do not try to multitask while you are doing this.
And what about all the optional fields? The form is just littered with them.
This is another classic trap, especially for the perfectionist. There are dozens of fields asking for extra details for nice-to-know information. But if the field doesn't have a little red asterisk next to it, it is not mandatory.
So the advice is to just skip it.
For your initial registration, yes. Your one and only goal is to get your status active. You can always log back in next week and add a beautifully written description of your company's history or update a secondary phone number. But do not let a confusing, optional question stall your progress for 2 hours while you research it. If you don't know the answer and it's optional, leave it blank. Keep moving.
That is official permission to be imperfect. I love it. So we follow the one browser rule. We skip the optional fluff. We do one final review of our data on the summary screen. We take a deep breath. We hit submit.
And then you hear nothing.
No confetti, no digital marching band.
Just a simple confirmation screen that says your registration has been submitted, and you'll get an automated email saying the same thing.
So does that mean I'm active? Can I go bid on a billion-dollar contract 5 minutes later?
Not yet. This begins the processing phase. Your data is now being digitally and automatically zipped off to the IRS for the TIN validation, to the DLA for the cage code assignment, and a few other places.
How long does that part usually take?
You know, historically, this could take weeks. But right now, the systems are actually pretty good. If your data is clean, which means your digital folder was 100% accurate, it usually takes between 24 and 48 hours.
That is incredibly fast for a government process.
It really is. You will get a second, much more important email that says, your SAM.gov registration is now active.
And that is the moment. That's when the vault door officially swings open.
That is the moment. You are now officially a federal contractor. You will have a cage code. You have a UEI. Your company is now searchable in the federal database.
Okay, let's play devil's advocate for a second. Let's say I did everything right. I did the prep, I used one browser, I typed perfectly, and the system broke, it crashed, or I got some weird cryptic error code. What do I do now? Do I call my senator?
Please, whatever you do, do not call your senator. They can't help you with a password reset. You go to fssd.gov. That stands for the Federal Service Desk.
Is this like a call center?
It's the official help desk for SAM and a bunch of other government systems. They have a live chat function and a phone number you can call.
And are they actually helpful? Because, you know, help desks can be pretty hit or miss.
Surprisingly, yes, they are. But you have to speak their language to get help.
And what language is that?
The language of screenshots and ticket numbers. If you get an error message on your screen, take a screenshot of it immediately. If you submit a help ticket, write down the ticket number. When you finally get an agent on the phone, don't just say, it's not working.
Right. Be specific.
Be incredibly specific. Say, I am trying to register a new entity, and on the tax information page, I am getting error code XYZ. The help desk agents have scripts and knowledge bases. If you give them the right keyword, they can find the solution. If you just vent your frustration, they have nothing to work with.
So even dealing with the help desk requires mise en place.
It's the government. Everything requires mise en place.
Okay, let's assume it all went smoothly. We got our active email, we're celebrating. But wait, the guide has a whole phase 6, maintenance. Because apparently this vault doesn't just stay open forever on its own.
No, it does not. This is the use it or lose it provision of federal contracting. Your SAM registration is valid for exactly 365 days.
So it expires, like a driver's license.
It expires. And on day 366, if you haven't renewed it, your status automatically switches from active to inactive.
And what are the real-world consequences of going inactive?
They are severe. First, you disappear from the search results. A contracting officer looking for a business like yours can no longer find you. Second, you are blocked from submitting a bid on any new proposal. But the worst one, by far, is if you already have a contract and you're working on it.
Oh, no. I think I know where this is going.
If you're performing on a contract and your SAM registration expires, the government's payment system, which is called Wide Area Workflow, will block your invoice. You cannot get paid for work you've already done.
Imagine having to explain that to your payroll department. Hey guys, checks might be a little late this month because I forgot to renew a website subscription.
It is an absolute disaster. And it happens all the time to businesses that aren't paying attention.
So what's the fix? What's the best practice?
The guide says, the moment you get that active email, go into your calendar and set a reminder. Not for day 365, but for day 300. Start the renewal process a good 60 days before it's due to expire.
Because things can go wrong during the renewal, too.
Exactly. Maybe the system has changed in the last year. Maybe you've moved offices and now you need to revalidate your address, which could take time. You have to give yourself a buffer.
And the guide also mentions trigger events, right? It's not just about the annual clock ticking down.
Correct. Certain changes to your business require you to update SAM immediately, not just once a year. If you move your physical office, you must update SAM. If you change your primary bank account, you must update SAM.
Because of the whole data matching thing.
If the IRS has your new address on file from your latest tax return, but SAM still has your old one, you are technically out of compliance.
So it's a living record. You can't just set it and forget it.
You have to treat it like part of your basic corporate hygiene. You brush your teeth, you file your taxes, you update your SAM registration.
You know, we've talked about SAM as this database, this gatekeeper. But is it just a list of names, or can it be a marketing tool? I think I recall the guide mentioning something about DSBS.
Yes. Now we're getting into the advanced level of thinking. SAM.gov feeds information into another separate system called DSBS, the Dynamic Small Business Search.
I just love these government acronyms. It's always nested systems within systems.
DSBS is basically the Google for contracting officers. When they have a requirement and they want to find a small business to fulfill it to meet their quota, their first stop is to search the DSBS database.
And where does DSBS get all of its information?
It gets it directly from your SAM profile. But here's the tragedy. The SAM registration form has a section for keywords and a capability narrative. And most people leave them completely blank because they're optional fields.
Wait a minute, we just told them to skip all the optional fields.
Touché. And you should, for the initial under an hour registration. Your only goal then is to get active. But, and this is really big, but Phase 6 maintenance isn't just about renewing, it's about enriching.
Ah, so you go back in after you're active.
Immediately, the day you get that active email, log back into your profile. And now you fill out those optional fields. You load up the keyword section with every term a buyer might use to find you. You write a compelling, concise capability statement in the narrative box. We specialize in high-velocity HVAC repair for secure government facilities.
So that when that contracting officer searches for HVAC secure, you pop up at the top of the list.
Exactly. If you leave those fields blank, your profile in DSBS just shows your company name and your address. It looks like a digital ghost town. You want your profile to look like a bustling professional storefront.
So the under an hour registration gets you the key to the store. The next hour of work is what actually builds the store and puts products on the shelves.
That is a perfect analogy.
You know, as we walk through this whole process, I can finally see why that under an hour claim is actually realistic. If you strip away all the time spent hunting for documents, the indecision about which NAICS codes to choose, and the technical glitches that come from using the wrong browser, the actual data entry part is just filling out a form.
It really is. It's maybe 20 pages of web forms.
Yeah.
A reasonably fast typist who has all the information ready could probably do the data entry in 20 minutes. The hour includes time for careful double-checking.
So is the famous complexity of government registration just a myth?
I wouldn't call it a myth. I would call it a filter.
A filter? What do you mean?
I think the process is designed, whether intentionally or not, to be rigorous. It's designed to weed out people who are disorganized, who are fraudulent, or who are just not serious about doing business with the government. If you can't be bothered to find your own tax ID number or check your email for a verification code, you probably aren't cut out to build a bridge for the Army Corps of Engineers.
That is a really profound way to look at it. The registration process is the first test.
It's your first deliverable to your new client. And if you treat it with the same level of respect and attention to detail that you would treat a client project, you will pass the test.
Let's zoom out a bit then. We've covered the mechanics, we know how to do it, but I want to circle back to the so what. We started by talking about that $700 billion number. But what does being a registered federal contractor actually look like on a day-to-day basis for a small business? How does it change their reality?
It fundamentally changes their horizon. In the private sector, you are almost always chasing the next sale. You are subject to the whims of the market. If the economy takes a dip, your commercial clients cut their spending immediately.
And the government?
The government operates on appropriated funds from Congress. They have to spend the money that's been allocated. And government contracts are often multi-year. A 3-year or a 5-year contract gives you a baseline of predictable revenue that allows you to actually bankroll growth. You can hire new staff knowing the money will be there next year. You can invest in new equipment.
It's a form of recession-proofing your business.
To a very large degree, yes. And it's also a massive credibility booster, even the private sector.
How so?
If you can put on your website that you are a registered federal contractor with a CAGE code, it means you have passed a significant vetting process. You've been validated by the U.S. government. Even your private sector clients respect that. It says this company is organized, they are compliant, they are stable.
It elevates your entire brand.
Significantly.
Yeah.
And we haven't even really touched on the whole subcontracting angle.
Oh, that's a good point, because you don't always have to be the prime contractor, right? You don't have to be the one signing the main contract directly with the Air Force.
Exactly. The big prime contractors, the Lockheeds, the Boeings, the Bechtels of the world, they have mandates from the government to work with small businesses. They need to find reliable subcontractors to meet their goals. But guess what? They almost always require their subcontractors to be registered in SAM.gov too.
So even if you never bid on a direct government contract yourself, just being in SAM makes you eligible to partner with the giants of the industry.
It puts you into the federal ecosystem. And once you're in that ecosystem, the opportunities start to appear from all over the place.
But you have to take that very first step. You have to turn the key in the lock.
And that key is forged in preparation.
I love that. Okay, let's do a super quick recap for the listener who is maybe sitting at their desk right now, staring at their laptop, and wondering if they should finally do this.
Let's break it down into simple steps.
Step 1, the why. You have to understand that this is the only way to access the world's biggest market.
No SAM, no game. It's that simple.
Step 2, the prep. This is phase 1, the digital folder.
That's your mission place. Get your UEI, your 10AN, your bank info, your exact legal address, and your strategic list of NAICS codes. Put them all in one text document.
Step 3, access. Go to login.gov first.
Create an account. Secure it with multi-factor authentication. And please, use a professional email address. Separate your business from your personal life.
Step 4, the workflow. This is where you actually fill out the forms.
Log in. Click Register New Entity, and just transcribe the data from your digital folder. No typos. Match your tax documents exactly. Select the NAICS codes that define your future, not just your past. And remember, the CAGE code is a gift at the end, not a requirement at the beginning.
Step 5, the people and the money.
Assign your 3 points of contact, even if it's just you, and then triple-check those bank account numbers so the electronic funds transfer actually works.
Step 6, the submission itself.
Use one browser in one tab. Skip any optional fields if you get stuck. Do a final review and hit that submit button.
And finally, step 7, maintenance.
The moment you're active, set a calendar reminder to renew in about 10 or 11 months. Keep that record alive. And then log back in to add your keywords and your capability narrative for the DSBS search.
It really does sound so manageable when you list it out like that.
It is manageable. The Level Up Guide isn't selling a magic wand. They are selling a process. And processes can be learned and executed.
You know, I'm thinking about the person listening to this right now. Maybe they run a small landscaping crew. Maybe they have a little IT shop. Maybe they manufacture some kind of specialized gasket in their garage. And for years, they've looked at the government market and thought, that's not for me. That's for the big guys. That's for the Beltway bandits in D.C.
That is the imposter syndrome of government contracting. It's incredibly common.
But the reality is the government wants to buy from them.
They are mandated by law to buy from them. Congress has passed specific legislation to force government agencies to buy from small businesses. There are contracting officers sitting at their desks right now, searching the database, actively looking for a company just like yours so they can hit their small business quotas.
But they can't find you.
They can't find you because you're not in the database. You're a ghost. You're invisible.
So maybe the barrier isn't really the government. Maybe the barrier is that 1 hour.
I think the barrier is the mindset. It's the fear that the 1 hour will turn into a frustrating month. But we've just walked through how, with the right preparation, it really is just an hour of focused work.
So here's the final provocative thought for our listener. What is actually stopping you? Is it the complexity, which we've just shown can be managed? Or is it maybe the fear of what comes next, the fear of the opportunity itself?
That's the real question, isn't it? Are you ready to handle that kind of growth?
If the government has lowered the drawbridge, cleaned up the registration process, and is handing you a free ID number to come on in, why are you still standing on the other side of the moat?
Get the folder, get the data, get registered.
Buy the scissors, cut your own red tape, open the vault.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And once you're in, well, that's a whole other depth dive, isn't it? Once you're registered, you have to learn how to actually find opportunities and win them. But you can't win if you're not in the game.
You can't win if you don't play. That should be on a t-shirt for every small business owner.
I think we should get them printed. Thank you so much for walking us through this. I feel like I could go register a fake company right now just for the thrill of seeing the process work.
Please don't do that. That is definitely fraud.
Right. Good point. Don't do that. But do go register your real business.
Absolutely. Good luck out there.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.